Daf Yomi. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Basra, Kuf Nun Beis, Bava Basra 152, and today's Daf is dedicated for Shmirah for the Chayalim, Matzah for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael, and the Seis Torah. And we're studying today in loving memory of Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, murdered al Kiddush Hashem, serving Hashem, trying to bring the Mashiach in Dubai, and murdered al Kiddush Hashem. Hashem Yinkom Damo, God avenge his blood. So we start on top of Kuf Nun Beis Amud Aleph on 152a. Gemara tells us, Itmar Matana Shlimara Shekasav Kinyan. So basically, the question is as follows: a Shlimara is a person who feels like he's so sick that he might die, and the rabbi is allowed at the Kana to say that this person doesn't need to do a formal transaction. He doesn't need to do a contract. He doesn't need to do a formal gift in order for it to be a valid gift. He just has to speak it. But let's say he does do a formal kinyan. Let's say he goes beyond what he's required to do. He does a kinyan sudar. So he does a formal transaction. What's the end result? So Rav Mishmei the Rav, they send the name of Rav, Amri, it's like he's riding on two animals, and we'll see what that means. Shmuel says, I don't know what this means. So Rav Mishmei the Rav, Amri Arkava Trei Rilche, Harei Kimatanas Bari, and Harei Kimatanas Shlimera. In certain degree, he's like the gift of a bari, of like a healthy person, and to a certain degree, he's like the gift of a person who's a shlimmer. So what does that mean? Since he does the kinyan, even though he's not required, arek matanas bari, it's like the gift of a healthy person, shem amad eno choser. That normally a shlimmer's gift is reversible, but if this man did a kinyan, it's not reversible. That's what Rab says. Arek matanas shlimmer, it's like the gift of a shlimmer. Shem Amar Hava Solaponi. That if he tries to transfer an oral loan that he has against one person, normally you can't do that if you're a healthy person unless the other person is there. But a shemira, in this case, it will work if he does a kinyan. Meaning to say, even though he does a kinyan, it will work. Look at the Rashbam. Rashbam says, "Bezos hamatana im nasan lo ava." With this gift, if he gives it to the person alone that another person owes him, even though that all three aren't there, Kone is going to acquire it, the Kaimalon, because we established the case in Gittin, Manoli Biatra, Tanela Pony, Bimamachosh, and Kana, Loshna Malva, Loshna Bikadon. Even though all three are not there, it's still going to work here because it's a shlimera gift. And therefore, to summarize, according to Rav, if you recite if when you give over this gift, you say the shlimera gift, it makes a kinyan, it has some of the laws of the shlimera and some of the laws of a healthy person. There's some of the laws of a healthy person that it's irreversible. Some of the laws of the shlimera that we're going to say you could give over a loan to a third party. Even though typically speaking, you wouldn't be able to do that if you're healthy unless all three were present. Shmuel says, I don't know what it means. What does that mean? I'm not sure if maybe he hasn't acquired it at all, even if he dies, because since he was saying, I'm reading from Rashbam, since he was saying, since it would have worked by just a verbal declaration, then so why do you have to go and do this kinyan? Therefore, perhaps he's changing it. He's taking it away. So that's why Shmuel says, "Lo yadanu ma'adam ba shema lo gamer lak nosu al b'shtar." Back in the text of the Gemara, maybe he only intended to give this over with the contract. Maybe he didn't intend to give it right away. Since the contract won't take effect after death, so therefore it's not a valid gift. But then the Gemara points out that this is actually a contradiction between Rav on Rav and Shmuel on Shmuel. How is this a contradiction between Rav on Rav and Shmuel on Shmuel? So the Gemara says it's a contradiction between Rav and Rav and Shmuel from the following statements. The Shalach Ravin Mishmei de Rabbi Avo. So Ravin once sent in the name of Rabbi Avo, who Havayade Sheshalach Rabbi Lazar Gola Mishum Rabbeinu. So Ravin sent the name of Rabbi Avo. You should know that Rabbi Lazar sent to the diaspora in the name of our teacher, Shlimara, that if there is an Shlimara Shamar Kisvu to know, he said to write it and then to give it, Manalaponi, Umace, and then he died. Ain Kosvim and Nosnin. Then we don't write it and give it. Shemalo Gamar Lachnosa El Bashtar. Maybe he said only give it with a contract. Vein Shtar Lachar Misa. And you can't do the contract after death. So under those circumstances, he says it doesn't take effect. And Shmuel says, no, you do write and you do give it. So kasha the Rav. It's a contradiction between Rav and Rav. Because in the first case, in the top case, Rav said it takes effect, and here he says it doesn't. And kasha the Shmuel, because he says in the first case it doesn't take effect, and here he says it takes effect. So the Gemara says, the Rav Kasha had the Kanumine had the low Kanumine. So Rav and Rav is not a question. In the first case, they did a kinyan, and therefore it's a reversal. In the second case, they didn't do the kinyan, therefore it doesn't take effect. The Shmuel, Kasha, and also according to Shmuel, it's not a contradiction, but miyafes kocho. Because we're talking about a case where it's clear that the only reason why he did the kinyan was not for it to take effect in the second case, but rather he just wrote that to strengthen his declaration. We'll see what that means. Yosef of Nachman bar Yitzchak Chorei de Rav, Ava Yosef Rabba Kameder of Nachman Kabay Minei Mior Mar Shmuel Shemol Gamar Lachnosa El Bashtar. The Shmuel say that maybe really intended only to give it to him with a contract. Vein Shtar Lachar Misa, and then there will be no contract after death. Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel Shlemar Shakotzav Kol Nechotzav La'acherim Afal Pisha Kanum Yado Amar Chozer. So here's the case where Shmuel says it's reversible. The Gemara says no. Biyadua shaloya kinyan el machmas visa. Isn't it known that there were in that case there was kinyan only after death? And the Gemara says the Rav Nachman responded, "Va'achvoi biyadei ve'ishtik." Rav Nachman signaled him with his hand, and he was quiet. And Kikam Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Mayach Vilach. What did he show? He said Amar Lebe Miyafes Kocho. He showed that in that case, the reason why the kinyan was reversible was because clearly that it was obviously the case that the kinyan was not to affect the transaction, but what was just to enhance his power. And so therefore, since it was just to enhance his power, therefore we're going to say it's reversible. It's like a typical shlimera gift. And so then the Gemara says, what is this example of you do something just to enhance its power? Amar Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda says, if it states the kanina mine mosif al matnasada, it says, and we effected an acquisition of the property from him in addition to the oral declaration. So therefore, we see from here that the kinyan is only to enhance the gift, and it's not really to effectuate the gift. And so therefore, it's not a real kinyan, and so therefore, it's reversible because it's like a typical shlemera gift. So now the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obviously the case. Kasav was there, but Kasav was there. It's obviously the case if a person is lying there dying, or he thinks he's dying, and he writes and he signs away all his possessions to one person, and then he changes his mind and he signs it away to another person. Well, that the second will is what's honored and not the first person. I know the Kiyasa Rav Dimi Amar. That's because when Rav Dimi came, he said, "Daitiki mivateles daitiki." That one daitiki, a daitiki is a will. The will of the second person cancels out the will of the first person, because as we said earlier in yesterday's daf, a shlimera can go back on what he said, and so therefore the second one is what's acquired and not the first person. But says the Gemara, but let's say he wrote it and he gave it over to the first person, and now he wants to change his mind and he write it and give the will over to the second person. Who is going to get it under those circumstances? So Rav Amar Rishon Kana, Shmuel Amar Sheni Kana. So Rav says it goes to the first person he gave it to, and Shmuel says it goes to the second person. Rav Amar Rishon Kana. Rav says it goes to the first person because since he wrote it down, it's like the gift of a healthy person. And so therefore it's irreversible. Shmuel Amar Sheni Kana. So Shmuel says just the second person is what's acquired. Because since we said we're not, it's like the gift. We're not sure if he adds the kinyan, if it makes it like a healthy person's gift. It's like the gift of a shlimmer, and so therefore he can reverse it. So the Gemara says, isn't this the exact same argument that we just had on the earlier page? Isn't this the exact same argument we had on Amud Aleph, that they're arguing about whether or not if you add kinyan to the gift of the shlimmer, if it takes effect or not? So didn't we already say Matanos shlimmer shektasaba kinyan, that Rav says it's like a gift of a healthy person. It's like you're riding on two animals, and Shmuel says I don't know what to judge with it. So Gemara says no, I'll tell you why we need it in both cases. Sricha, we need it in both cases. The Inmar Baha, because if we only had it in the first case, I would have said Baha Kama Rav. In that case, Rav says that it works to make it a healthy person's gift. Why? Mishum the Kanumine, because they actually did a kinyan. Aval Baha the Kanumine, but in the second case, where he didn't do a kinyan, maybe he'll agree with Shmuel that it's no different than any other gift. Meaning to say, in the first case, they did a kinyan, but in the second case, they just delivered a written will. So it's not a kinyan, says the Rashbam. Therefore, it's only proving evidence that this is who he intends to give it to. So maybe it's reversible. And so that's that case. V'yetmar Baha, and if you only had it in the second case, Baha the Kamar Shmuel, maybe in the second case, that's where Shmuel rules that it's a shlim or a gift and reversal. Bahach, but in the first case, Rav, he might have said that Shmuel agrees with Rav that it is a healthy person's gift because there was a kinyan there, so maybe it says the healthy person's gift. So therefore, both of them are necessary. So now the Gemara says there's a different version of this, but Surah Masnu Hachi, but Pumpadisa Masnu Hachi. So the first version was how they taught it in Surah, but the second version is how they teach it in Pumpadisa. And now they teach it Amar of Yirbi and Barabba, Shachole Mibei Rav Shmuel, Yoram Den Rabbeinu. And they sent from Rav's academy to Shmuel, teach us, Shlimer Ashakatsav, Kol Nachasav Lacherim, the Kanumiyado. Shlimer says, I'm giving all my assets to this person, and they did a kinyan. Mao, Shalchu, Einachar Kinyan Klim. So they sent back. Shmuel says that once a kinyan has been performed, you can't overturn it, meaning to say it's like the gift of a healthy person. And so therefore, it's irrevocable. So the Gemara thought to him, Simlara said, the Gemara's assumption was that this is, if you want to give it to somebody else, it's not reversible. You can't take it away from him and give it to somebody else. But if he wants to take it back, it'll be okay. So whether it's to himself or to others, that it's not going to be reversible. And in fact, also there was a person who did this shlimara gift and they acquired it, and it came for Rafuna. You can't retract it. It's not going to be a retractable shlimara gift because you didn't give this in the way typically. And you can't give this in the way typically people do this gift. You did a kinyan, so therefore it's not retractable. So, hold on.